line. I'm joined by the editor-in-chief of Algemeiner, Dovid Efune. So like I said before, the polls show much greater Jewish support for Biden. How has Trump's first term swayed Jewish voters, if at all?
The truth is, going by the polls, and there have been a few polls, including the one that you mentioned, it doesn't look like there's been any movement whatsoever. Having said that, there is a healthy dose of skepticism over the polls themselves, especially from those that are supportive of President Trump, because obviously of how things turned out the last time around in 2016, where the polls showed a great degree of certainty that the election would go to Hillary Clinton. And by the way, that wasn't the only case where you had polls showing one result and the outcome being radically different. So to the extent that there is a different outcome to be expected than is being shown in the polls, there is a strong possibility that a hidden Trump vote includes a hidden Jewish vote for Trump this time around.
Now, what are the burning election issues for American Jews?
Well, look, American Jews care about a lot of things, and of course, it's not a monolithic group. You know, there are subcategories. You have sort of the more orthodox groups, and you have secular groups. Obviously, you have those Democrat and Republican groups, but certainly social issues are important to many in the Jewish community, economic issues, support for Israel, national security, Iran. I think the big question is less what are the key issues, because, you know, there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed, but really, what are the priorities? And what it boils down to in terms of where people are going to end up voting is how they prioritize the issues that they're voting on. And I think you'll find that national security will rank higher for those that will end up voting Republican, or taxation issues, for example, economic issues, and more social issues and other issues will probably rank higher on a prioritization list for a Jewish Democrat.
Now, the way that Israeli Jews and American Jews view Donald Trump is night and day, we could say, right? Tell us more about this kind of difference between Israeli Jews and American Jews and their perception of Trump.
You know, this question reminds me of the famous discussion that's said to have taken place between Henry Kissinger and Golda Meir, where they sort of hit a rocky spot in some negotiations. And Kissinger said to Golda Meir, you know, madam, you've got to understand that I am first an American, then a Secretary of State, and last on my list is the fact that I'm a Jew. And Golda turned to him and said, well, you must know, Henry, that in Israel, we read from left to right, right?
Yeah, right.
Or right to left. So, you know, in that sense, you have American Jews and Israeli Jews that really have come from a completely different vantage point. Of course, American Jews are living in America. They're far away from the conflict zones. And in their outlook, they could afford to take risks on some of the key issues, like dealing with the Palestinians, peace with the Palestinians, like the issue of Iran. Israeli Jews really come from a different perspective. And to be frank, it's their perspective, I think, that carries the most weight on those particular issues. Having said that, they don't get to vote in the United States. But that really does explain the gulf that exists. You know, it's easier to take risks when you're here in the United States. Obviously, Israelis have learned from very hard experiences that there are certain risks that they're just not prepared to take at this point, especially on security matters vis-a-vis the Palestinians in Iran.
Why do you think that Trump's very pro-Israel administration hasn't attracted more Jewish voters?
Well, I think it boils back to the question that we had before, which is, you know, a question of prioritization. I mean, I think there really is consensus in the American Jewish community that the president has done some incredible things for Israel. I think it's not a stretch to say that he has been the most pro-Israel administration in the history of the United States, certainly in recent history. And even on the Democratic side, there is a great degree of agreement over that point. Having said that, you know, his opponents will tend to prioritize a host of other issues, social issues, for example. There's a great sense of frustration over the president's character, which, of course, has been something that has been a source of discussion. But in the end of the day, really, Trump or no Trump, the personality, the character, the uniqueness of the Trump administration doesn't really seem to have any impact whatsoever in terms of what the polls are looking like now. It seems that the Jewish vote is as entrenched as it's ever been. Having said that, the polls have lied before. There's a good chance that we're going to get a surprise next week.